Hello there, my name's David and I'm a tight arse. I hate paying massive amounts of money for a hobby that I enjoy, and let's face it, we certainly know what certain companies can charge for their miniatures, which is why I'm always on the lookout for a bargain, and sometimes I grab something that I can make something that, well, I think is decent. So that is why today I'm going to be taking some of these dollar store toys and turning them into a playable miniature, something like this. The game's Warhammer 40K, it's the Gaunt's Ghost Chaos Army, and these are Loxatl Mercenaries. If you've been following along to previous ones of my vlogs, you'll have seen the progress that I've been doing. So what I've done is I've grabbed all of that footage together, put it into a one-stop shop from start to finish. Let's have the Loxatl. There is the basis for the Loxatl. So what I need to do is a prototype on how I am going to base and model them. I've actually been having a think about this, and because they've got that sort of ripper gun which is on their stomach, I'm wondering whether or not I should make one and make a mold of it, because I think I've got about 5 or 10 Loxatl to do, and I don't want to be scratch building each and every ripper gun, and I've got to do the ammo belt as well, so I've got to work out how to do that. Okay, now I have decided to go along the route of raiding the Army Man box yet again, and it is these. And this particular part here is what I had imagined as being a really good bit to use for the flechette cannon for the Loxatl. And basically all I've got to do is cut that section out, square it off, pop a barrel on front, and that is going to be the blaster itself. Now, the bandoliers, you've seen me use these before, and the last time I used them, I was hitting them with a hammer to make rivets for the Orc tanks and the Orc Stomper. But they make not too bad flechette shells. All I have to do is probably do a wee bit of scoring or cutting, just so it's a bit more flexible. Yeah, because you see how it snaps there, so that I can bend it around the body. I may even need to use heat or warm water or something like that just to get it to go around. But essentially, if that is the Loxatl like that, and that's the tail, that's the body, that's the head, the gun goes on the underside of it like that, and it's got the bandolier going essentially straight across its back like that. So that is what I am going to be using for the Loxatl. I'd better get some building done. And this section here is the one that I want to reclaim from this. In fact, I'll just go snips for this. I'll see if I can keep that knobby bit on the front, because that will be an ideal anchor point for the gun barrel. Right, I'll shave that down. I'll clean this up, and then we'll go get a Loxatl and do something about the ammo bandoliers. Oh yes, I think what I'm going to have to do is just give them a slight score, just to kind of break up those ridges and make it a wee bit easier to bend. And then I'll try either a heat gun or hot water and just try and bend it round in a circle. Obviously I've got to get one of the miniatures to see exactly how small I've got to make the circle, and hopefully I've got enough ammo belts there to be able to do it. If not, if that doesn't work and it keeps just sort of like snapping, then the backup plan is going to be, unfortunately, get something like a strip of paper, snip ones off individually, glue it to the paper as if it's an ammo belt, and then maybe put another strip of paper over the top to sort of like join it together. I'm not sure, but that's the backup plan. I'll be able to do it. It just depends how much of a faff it's going to be. Right, I'll go grab some lizards. Hello everybody, I'm a Loxatl mercenary. Yeah, okay, I didn't do the assembly of this on camera because, one, the heat gun that I used to sort of shape the ammunition, that and cell phones and cameras, if you point it in the wrong direction, is just not a good thing. There is obviously the reclaimed part of the machine gun, and I've added And of course this was the point where the battery ran out on the cordless mic and you can't hear anything, which is why you're getting a voiceover. But I had been talking about the fact that I'd added the gun barrel and drilled it. Now comes the logistical problem of getting such a long miniature to fit on the right size base. And the one saving grace about it is the fact that it's such a squishy miniature that I can sort of bend it around. Because it is such a long miniature, I do have the option of sort of shortening that body essentially by cutting it roundabout in the middle, and then I can sort of hide the join under that ammo bandolier. The other thing with it being so flexible and the fact that Loxatl are really good climbers, I have also got the option of adding sort of quite bumpy or almost vertical terrain onto it, and then I can sort of like squish it up and over things. So I've got a bit of vertical room to be able to move it about or get it to fit onto the base properly. I don't want to be going for larger bases. That is around about the right size for an Ogryn, which is essentially what these are going to be taking the place of. And the one good thing about it being such a flexible miniature is the fact that there's an awful lot of wiggle room for me to be able to just sort of bend legs back or position them in sort of odd ways, which is not necessarily how it's lying, but glue will hold it in place. And then it is on to actually fixing it to the miniature. I've got the super glue ready, and if it ever comes into shot, that's baking soda. So I've essentially got the ability to sort of like glue it, and it will set very quickly. And it doesn't matter about sort of like the grittiness of the baking soda, because there's going to be other ground terrain there as well. Starting off, just to anchor the miniature, I'm gluing along the base of the flechette gun and just popping that into place. Then a bit of a squirt with baking soda. And now that that's anchored, I've got the ability to, move those legs back, pop it into position, bit of baking soda, there you go, that's it positioned. Obviously rinse and repeat for the other two legs and that tail. Yeah, so I had to glue this in a couple of places, essentially just to get it to curl around sort of nicely and not overhang the base too much. Obviously I was getting a fair amount of overhang on the head, but nah, that's okay. I mean, any bayoneted rifle or anything like that always overhangs the front of a miniature. Give it a wee bit extra on the tail there because there was obviously quite a bit of flex around, and because it was sort of trying to move by itself, I also ended up gluing its tail to its back, which was fine because the material, that sort of rubbery stuff, actually glued to itself without any hassle whatsoever, and it just sort of like eased off the tension. And there you are, that's one mounted Loxatl Mercenary. I think the thing that's going to set this thing apart is the colour scheme that I painted, because obviously the Loxatl are sort of chameleon-like, and depending on what I do in terms of sort of like the ground cover, then I've got to get it to blend in, but also I've got the opportunity of adding sort of a spot colour and bits of debris that are a slightly different colour than just sort of like normal grey dirt, and they should be blending in with that as well. So I think these are going to be quite fun to paint. And I want almost neat PVA for this, because obviously it's got to certainly grab onto those larger pieces. I'm just going to use a very small drop of soapy water, get that mixed through. That's just to give it a little bit of thinness to flow things around, and the soap obviously is there to break up the surface tension. Then let's have this bad boy. Make sure I get all the way underneath. And there's a couple of little areas where it's starting to pull away, so I'm adding extra glue to them. I'm really thickening it on, and then into the mix. Yeah, we've got some nice rubble bits and things like that in there. I'm just going to selectively pop something a bit more man-made on. Now I'm going to let that dry a little bit, but before it goes off for its undercoat, I am going to be, and what I would recommend strongly on this kind of thing, because there are those big chunky bits, is actually add a sealer coat. Now, you've seen me do that before, but it's essentially about 1 part PVA, 2 parts IPA, and then top off the rest with soapy water. And it's nice and runny, but you kind of squirt it on over the top, and it just adds that protective coat, and it will give a little bit more adhesion to some of those larger pieces. Here it is after it's had its undercoat. I've just used a straight black because that's normally what I use for sort of rubbly type bases. It's painting time, woohoo! And I have certainly been looking forward to this. Right, what am I going to start with? Well, I'm actually going to go for the flechette cannon because it is in an awkward place. And because it kind of drags along the ground, I don't mind too much if there's a bit of sort of dirtiness gets onto it, just with, you know, accidental overbrush from some of the other colours. So that is what I am going to do, plus the ammo belt. Bit of gunmetal here, and just pick out that cannon and most of the band across the back of the bandolier, and I will swap to a smaller brush just to get in the recesses there. Didn't realise I'd missed so much of the underside of the Loxatl. Not sure whether or not to leave that as is or not. I think I might, you know. And then let's go a bit of a medium grey. This is the normal way that I do my bases. Sort of a black undercoat, dry brush of grey around the edge, and then let's get a dry brush on all of that ground. I don't mind if I accidentally stray up onto the Loxatl itself. It is supposed to blend in with its surroundings, so the fact that it's the same colour is not in any way, shape or form a problem. Am I okay with that? Yeah, I'm okay with that. Oh, just while I remember it, now that I've got the ground cover on, I've got, you know, those debris bits. So I'll just pick that out. And there was some cabling under here that I wanted to pick out as well. And then it is a wee bit of Tamiya copper just to pick out those flechette canisters. It's already starting to come together, isn't it? Look, I'm just going to do a little bit of a touch up. That ground cover is just a wee bit on the too dark side for my liking, especially for sort of what I'm after. So I'm just going to go back over it with a wee bit more of a lighter grey. Oh, that's better. Definitely more what I was after, and that is fine. Okay, just got a wee speck of orange here because I've got some metal on the ground, and I'm going to pop a bit of rust on it like that, and because it's old and been in the ground, it's orange first, followed by some on brown, and then there was some sort of big masonry like concrete chunks in there as well, and I'm just going to use bone white to pick those out, just kind of like that. And essentially, as you can see, what I'm doing is making sure that there is different colours and shapes and textures on the ground cover, so that then, because these are camouflage specialists, it'll kind of allow me a little bit more free rein on how I go about painting the body to use their sort of chameleon powers to blend in. Okay, time to start on the camo, and because it is primarily sort of dark with grey, and I've got a black undercoat on there, what I am going to try and do is basically just stipple coat this miniature with grey and see how that starts blending in with the ground. Oh, that was a wee bit aggressive. Alright, and that is not blending in too badly at all, but there is more to come. Now, this next bit may seem counterintuitive, but there is a method to my madness. Because it is chameleon-like and has to blend in with the rest of the ground cover, I want to finish the ground cover, including things like foliage and that sort of thing, before I finish the camouflage painting. Okay, glue on, and then some of that foliage in there around there. Yes, that's just a few dobs. And then just get a bit of bush in there, which is a nice different colour. And now, I probably need to leave that to dry at least a little bit so I can handle it before I finish off the painting. Alright, let's mess about with a little bit of camo. Just grab a bit of goblin green there, a little bit of this antique white, kind of flicky it together and then just kind of stipple it. Bit up on that arm because from the top looking down there is some ground cover there, or rather that sort of grass effect. Yeah, that's more the colour I'm after. It's fun kind of mixing on the fly like this. Yeah, happy with that. And then we've got these very, very definite blocks. Just go back over some of that. Make sure I'm absolutely certain that I've got that prominent. Give it one up here on its head, which is obviously off base, but it just carries on with the scheme. And then, because we did have one, let's have, whereabouts? And then just rust it up. A bit like that. And then that ties in another one. How's that looking from the top? Kind of camouflaged? I think so. Well, we've got it here. Let's just have some of those finishing touches, and I am just doing the talons. And then the last thing is to do some eyes. Apparently they come in red-eyed variants and yellow-eyed variants. I am going to go for yellow because I think that is going to offset it nicely on here. And then the pupils, and it's done.
And here is the pack leader in all his pride and glory. And you know what? I'm quite chuffed with that. So, 1 down, 9 to go. I think for the others, I need to do just a little bit more in the way of variation on the base. This one was maybe a little bit too sort of grey, a little bit too forced. A few brick walls, a little bit of different colour. You know, maybe it's even a shattered wall with a bit of poster that I can try and sort of like replicate onto the body. Who knows? It's all in that camouflage colour scheme. But you know what? I think they are going to be a worthy addition to my Sabbat Worlds Crusade Chaos forces. Don't try saying that 3 times fast. Anyway, that probably takes us towards the end of this video. If you have stuck around and you have enjoyed what you've seen, please do remember to hit the like and subscribe button. If you are new, get notifications because there is more in this line of stuff that is going to be coming in the very near future. Have a good morning, day, evening, night, wherever you are in the world, and until next time, I shall see you. Toodle pip for now.